So let's move to the Netzarim corridor, which is the other strategic corridor that the Israelis are attempting to take. And you can see here, we might have to actually adapt this map because the Israelis have spent the last 2 weeks widening the corridor. They're expanding this corridor. Abu Ubaidah calls the corridor of death. There was some reporting this week. There's been more than 30 Israelis killed along this corridor in operations, although it's difficult. The number may be higher because it's difficult to know exactly where the casualties take place. The Israelis always are vague about, they don't say in the Netzarim corridor, they say in northern Gaza. And you have to kind of put the pieces together on that. But the operations have been, previously, we've been reporting on Tel El-Hawa. They were expanding the Netzarim corridor in Tel El-Hawa there in the southwest. And now this week, they've been expanding it in Zeitoun, in the Zeitoun neighborhood. And Ronan Bergman, who reports for the New York Times, but always writes completely different stories in Hebrew, wrote in 𝐓𝐿 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐿 in Hebrew about Netanyahu sending to the negotiations in Cairo, sending his negotiators with a plan to create a moat, a trench, a moat along the Netzarim corridor as the way to enforce the split. They're trying to prevent people from coming back home to the north, and that's the method that they're doing it. And they disgustingly call it the drain because they want a major checkpoint for everyone to filter through a massive checkpoint before they re-enter the north. And that's what's holding up these negotiations on a ceasefire, because these are just clauses that Netanyahu throws in on already agreed upon principles. And Ronan Bergman, writing in 𝐓𝐿 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐿, wrote about how the families of the captives, the Israeli captives, are always hanging on one thing, that if they fix this one part of the agreement, maybe they'll maybe we can free the hostages, in their view. And Bergman says no, because Netanyahu will just add another clause to it, which is interesting because that framing of Netanyahu avoiding the ceasefire agreement and the prisoner exchange, it's not how he writes in the New York Times, and then not how the New York Times covers this. So in the Netzarim corridor, there's been a number of operations this week. Let's look at number 10. This is an operation, sniper operation, again, an Al Ghul sniper operation. Al Ghul, Adnan Al Ghul, the founder of the professionalization and expansion of Qassam's indigenously built weapon system. So they named the most fierce rifle after him. And this rifle has, of course, killed scores of Israelis. And they're about to do another one here. We again cut it out because we want to keep these videos online. But let's just say if you're at the shooting range, it would be right where the bullseye is on the target at the shooting range here. And if when we watch it, we'll loop it one more time around so I can show you this. When we loop it around here tomorrow, you can see that we're going to see the gray-tipped Israeli military industries bullet that he puts in there. Maybe you can't see it. You can see it on a freeze frame up close. I checked it out for you. It's gray. So that's an armor-piercing incendiary round that is Israeli military. These were rounds that were captured. So we're still seeing them using captured rounds to kill Israeli soldiers. And this is near the University College of Applied Sciences. They're using this university. They destroyed it, and now they're using it as a base. And using it as a base in the corridor got that guy killed. And there was an operation too in Zeitoun this week that killed at least 4 soldiers and injured 8. And again, that points to Abu Ubaidah talking about how these operations are only a part. What you see on video is not all of their operations. It's only a part of their operations. And so that ambush and booby trap in Zeitoun shows you that. We don't have any video of it, despite the fact that the Israelis claimed that they were that the intelligence used for the hit was through closed-circuit television cameras, which, of course, we know has been true since the beginning of the war. And so this operation that we're looking at here, we can loop this around to tomorrow. This is a Zawari drone. This is a suicide drone. one-way attack drone, explosive-laden drone. I showed you this last week. If people didn't see last week's show, check out the segment on YouTube about it, because I dug into it a little bit. But this is named after Mohammad Zawahiri, who is the founder of the drone program. And the first drone was launched in the 2014 war. But in this war, they've used upwards of 50. They used more than 30 on October 7th as part of the operation, the blinding and cover operation for the beginning of October 7th included 36 of these built weapons. And you can see it's just hand launched. The fighter's launching it with his hand, and off it goes. And that we've seen a number of these. So this is targeting Israeli positions in the Netzarim corridor. And the longer the Israelis stay in the Netzarim corridor, the more we'll see operations like this, because the Palestinians can calibrate what weapons to use in that space. And so this week alone, there was more than 25 operations on the corridor. And that, to me, is an unsustainable number of operations going forward. If the Israelis intend to stay in this area, especially if they pull out of other areas and just intend to hold the Netzarim corridor, where the resistance can focus entirely on that corridor. And as we know, the Israelis don't know enough about the tunnels to know the tunnel network underneath the corridor, although they keep telling their population that they find 250 meters of a tunnel here or there, and blow it up on camera and release that footage. So like I said, there was the booby trap operation. So there was at least 6 killed in the Netzarim corridor this week alone. And last week we saw the operation where there was 2 killed by the new recruits operation. So lots going on in the Netzarim corridor, lots of resistance in the corridor, and the corridor is part of the strategic aims of the Israelis to wrestle some sort of victory out of this defeat that they're experiencing in Gaza, which is to chop up the territory and make it more manageable, and to hold the Philadelphia corridor on the Rafah border to try to prevent weapons smuggling. But as we know, we've been watching this every single week. We're not seeing a lot of smuggled weapons. You see actually very few smuggled weapons when you really think about it. We saw that HJ8 system, the Chinese system that the Rafah Brigade has. We've seen a couple of Cornets. We've seen a Concours be fired. But for the most part, what we're watching is indigenously made Palestinian weapons that are made from unexploded ordnance from Israeli weapons, which there's now more than ever in Gaza. And holding the corridor isn't going to prevent Palestinians from rebuilding their weapons industry, because they have unexploded ordnance, and all the metal that comes with those bombs when it's not exploded can all be reused in these weapons. So again, I think it's a failed strategy. It's preventing a prisoner exchange and the end of the war, which is of course what Netanyahu has been trying to do from the start. So that is the resistance report from the Gaza Strip.